On this episode of Survive and Thrive 8791, from the Buck and Honey's remote studios, I welcome Cory Poole, a devoted husband and father whose world changed when his daughter Aubrey was diagnosed with SMA Type 1. Through love, acceptance, and an unbreakable family bond, the Poole family found strength in an unimaginable diagnosis. Don't miss this powerful story of perseverance, balance, and family love. You won't want to miss this episode of Survive and Thrive 8791. Here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. What is up? Wherever you are, whatever you are doing, I hope you are having a great day. Welcome to another episode of Survive and Thrive 8791. I'm your host, Coach Decora. We are in the Buck and Honey's remote studios on the east side of our great capital city, Madison, Wisconsin. You can follow the podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, iHeartRadio, and YouTube at Survive and Thrive 8791. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at tdecora8791, as well as hitting me up on Facebook at Tim Decora. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button or like button wherever you listen to the show. Leave me a comment if you like what you heard, if there's a topic, or you know a guest who would love to share their story. Email me at tdecora@gmail.com. Glad you could join us today. Our mission is to share stories and conversations that make you cry, laugh, and think, stimulating emotions, creating laughter, and inspiring the mind. A new episode will air on Monday and Thursday morning featuring a wide range of guests. The podcast will touch on many subjects such as grief, loss of a loved one, recovery, professional setback, divorce, success despite challenges, etc. Our guests will share how they learn to survive and thrive. According to the internet, and the internet is always right, so estimates from published U.S. studies, they estimated that about 8,000 to about 10,000 individuals with SMA, Spinal Muscular Atrophy, SMA Types 1, 2, and 3, are living in the United States in 2016. Approximately about 15 to 1,800 of those people have SMA Type 1, with 323 million people back in 2016. It's rare to have that SMA Type 1. And we have Cory Poole here to talk a little bit about his journey with that. Today, I welcome Cory Poole to the Buck and Honey's remote studios. Born and raised in Madison, Wisconsin, Cory is a proud alum of Monona Grove High School. After high school, he would take his talents to the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. His first job was a FIA teacher in a local school district outside of Madison. You found that teaching isn't for everyone and decided to go into mortgage business as a loan officer, and you've been with UW Credit Union since 2002. I'm so glad you could join us today. Cory Poole, what is up?
Here and excited to be here. Hopefully can contribute to the good work that you're doing in your community, Tim.
Oh, I hope so. And it's not just the community, it's the world.
Yeah, for sure.
It's here's kind of what's unbelievable is that I get some analytics from Spotify, and I now appear in, I think it's 7 countries, Russia, Mexico, obviously the United States, and there's a couple other ones in, the UK. Yeah, Great Britain, I think is, I hope those are the same. Not very good with my stuff. But how were the holidays? We're about, a little over a month from the holidays.
Oh, they were great. Both our families are local, so we don't have to do a lot of traveling, which in our situation with Aubrey is very helpful because getting her around can be a little bit challenging, especially in the winter.
Mm-hmm.
But, we host my side, so that's easy. We have a pajama party and have fun, and it's always a good time. And then the other Christmas Eve, we're with Kate's parents, and Christmas Day is actually kind of nice. We get to lounge around and do nothing.
Deep free. Holy smokes! Last week, did you step outside? I know, again, one of our last guests said that their dog wouldn't even go outside.
I pretty much stayed inside. I'm fortunate enough to work from home, so I didn't have to actually even leave the house if I didn't want to. So I got to avoid that fairly well.
You've been big in the AAU travel basketball circuit. I love basketball. It's probably my 1A. Football is probably my 1B. Basketball, you and I have had probably, I'm going to say at least a dozen or more conversations just on the phone, and that's kind of what we're doing right here today. It's just a conversation between two dudes. I've just enjoyed that part about you and I and talking hoops. It's called Let It Rain. What's that been like since it all started?
Oh, well, that was a great, wonderful, meaningful adventure. I'm actually officially done now.
You did tell me that.
As of last summer. Last summer is for now, my last year coaching. I mean, we started Let It Rain from the very ground up.
Grassroots, I think.
Grassroots for sure. And really the only reason we did it is because we wanted our kids to play basketball and have fun. And so that was kind of the goal heading in. There was no goal of like building this big program or anything like that. We literally started with 2 teams. Eventually grew out of control. It went from a
grass fire.
Yeah, it went from a hobby to a holy cow, this is like another full-time job.
Yeah, I would have to second you on that. I did that with my daughter. In addition to the parents that I had in high school, the parent group, love them to death. And those, hey, you parents, same thing. I mean, you're on the road and in hotels and going to gyms and working with their kids. And not only the parents, but I also have relationships still with the players, some of them. We're going to get moving on because of your content. I mean, this is going to be good stuff, and I think your story is going to help some people, but we're going to talk about that. But before we do that, I got to talk about our sponsor, Buck and Honey's Restaurants, our place that people can escape to with their great food and drink menu, 5-star customer service, and a welcoming and vibrant atmosphere. People keep coming back with locations in Sun Prairie, Monona, Waunakee, and Mount Horeb. Most communities in the Dane County can get to a Buck and Honey's within 10 to 15 minutes. Have you been to Buck and Honey's before?
Yes. As we talked about prior to this, when I thought there were only 3 locations, I thought I'd been to all of them, but I've not been to the Mount Horeb one, but the other 3 are great places.
Yeah. Next time you go, my favorite meal typically is the Bomber's Special Pizza. And I've been eating that pizza since about the mid-'80s. On the podcast, our guests will follow the recovery format for sharing their story, and that is, what is it, what was it like, what happened, and what is it like now? And we're going to cover what was it like and what happened in segment 1, and then we're going to come back with segment 2 and talk about what is it like now, and then your suggestions for thriving in segment 2. So segment 1, what was it like before and what happened? So you were born and raised right here in Madison, Wisconsin. What was that like growing up in the capital city?
Well, I mean, Madison's just an amazing place, as I think most people know. Always shows up on the best places to live across the nation. But I'm 50 now, so I was born in 74, so I grew up in the 80s, and Madison,
and you're still alive.
Come on, right? Isn't that amazing? Are we Is that Gen X? Is that what we are? I always get confused by that stuff. But
I'm just happy to be alive. I don't even know what I am.
But I mean, Madison in the 80s to me was a really special place.
So Madison in the 80s when I grew up, amazing place. East Side. I was La Follette School District, if you will. Back then. It was sports. It was being outside. It was riding your bike. It was, you left in the morning and your parents told you to come home by, when the street lights came on. It was just that kind of, it was that kind of world, right? And that you grew up probably in something fairly similar, completely different than how kids grew up these days. But I had a wonderful childhood, wonderful parents, 2 siblings that were great, and it was awesome. Loved it.
Yeah, and we took all of those skills that we worked on and honed in the summer: kickball, baseball, stickball, hockey, basketball, football. We always played during kind of the seasons.
Yeah.
Summer was baseball, kickball, or whatever. You took that then. What extracurricular activities did you do in high school?
Baseball was kind of my main sport in high school. I also played 1 year of hockey, and I was a hockey kid early on in
growing
life. I didn't get to basketball till I think like 6th grade, 7th grade, something like that. It was a little later. But did some basketball too in high school. But primarily I was a baseball guy in high school.
You have a family of your own now, and you're going to kind of dive in. I just want to have you give a little sample to the listeners, because we're going to revisit all of those kids. So tell us about your family.
So my wife is Katie. Lothe is her original name.
Okay.
The Lothe family in Sun Prairie. Now Poole, she's 7.5 years younger than me. We got together when she was pretty young, actually, and I was still floating around as a mid-20s guy with not much direction. But ended up with some children. We lost our first child, Gabrielle, which we've talked a little bit about. That was early on, January 25th of 2003. Okay. Kate was just 20 years old at the time. And then we're fortunate enough that following December, so literally 11 months later, we turned around and wanted a child, of course, and Avery was born into the world. Healthy, strong, wonderful, crazy. She's an amazing young lady.
An amazing basketball player, too.
Yeah, she plays at UW Oshkosh.
Yep.
She's a junior up there. Had a nice career at Monona Grove. She loves the game. It's all she's known, really, since forever. And what's kind of cool with her is her roommates, Kate Hummel and Mallory Lindsay. I coached both of them through Let It Rain from like 5th grade on. So they've been teammates from different school districts forever. So that mission that I talked about, that I wanted my daughter to have something, it's kind of come true. They're roommates up at Oshkosh. They play together.
And they make the superpower up there.
Well, they all play a good part. And then 3.5 years later, Aubrey came around.
Yep.
Aubrey's our youngest. She'll be 18 in April. Healthy baby when she was born. Big head of red hair. Crazy.
Red hair, okay.
Yeah, and unfortunately, she started missing some milestones early on in her life and found out that she had spinal muscular atrophy type 1. I don't know how deep you want me to go into this, but at the time, at that point in time, and still is, it's a terminal illness with life expectancy of 2.
And so she's approaching 18.
She'll be 18 in April. So it's been a long, crazy, incredible journey with her.
Well, we could probably touch on now that with testing, all of that goes into a baby coming into the world, you said is, I don't think you can say that completely eradicated.
Yeah, it hasn't been eradicated, hasn't been cured. Cure is different than what they've done. I'm not super well versed in it, but basically what it comes down to now is families during the time of early diagnosis with us, families were fighting for prenatal screening, lots of research, things of that nature. We had a very, very small part in that. But now we've gotten to the point where in Wisconsin, it's prenatal screening, in many other states. If you have child and prenatal screening shows it as SMA type 1, as soon as the baby is born, they can inject it with this treatment, and it essentially eradicates the disease. And basically the disease is Lou Gehrig's disease in childhood form, essentially. So when Aubrey was born, the reason she was missing milestones, like moving her head around and her limbs, was her motor neurons were dying off. So she was born without the SMN1 gene, and the SMN1 gene in you and I feeds our motor neurons and keeps them vibrant and alive, and hers just were dying off instead, unfortunately. And just because I get this question, so they've eradicated it if you hit a newborn with this treatment. For kids like Aubrey, where the disease has moved on too far, you can't revitalize motor neurons once they've died off. So for Aubrey, the treatment would be twofold. It'd be stem cell replacement, of motor neurons, plus this treatment for the SMN1 gene expression. That's just not in the cards, and I don't think her body would be willing or be able to accept it anyways. So what's wonderful about Aubrey, in some cases the disease, it doesn't affect her brain. So she is basically a 17-year-old girl stuck in a body that does not work. So she can't breathe on her own. She can't eat. She can't move. She needs help with everything. She is bright. She's funny as all hell.
And she likes the Family Guy and South Park.
Oh, she loves Family Guy. Loves to make me do things that she knows maybe most people don't like to do, like change diapers.
Poking
and things
the
of that
bear,
nature.
maybe.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. And like I told you this, and maybe we would have got to this anyways, but what's super unique about her and what she's truly taught me more than anything else, she's always happy. She's a kid that when she gets up in the morning, she can't move. She can't get out of bed. If she's uncomfortable, she can't fix that for herself. She can't do anything that the rest of us can do. And she's always happy. Who am I with that in my house to ever complain about it? I mean, come on. You've got it great. We've all got it great. We all got this one special, unique life to live. And that's truly what she's taught me is like, no matter what happens in your life, like, be thankful for it. Like, we're alive, we're breathing, you can get up, you can actually make choices to better yourself and to better your day and to better other people's day. That's what she's taught me. I'm still a work in progress with it.
We all are.
that to me is the most profound lesson, because she's the type of person that she can't do anything for herself, right? People look at her strange at times, right? Because she's in a lay down wheelchair. It's a 6-foot long wheelchair. But boy, if you just include her, if you acknowledge her, she just lights up the world, and that to me is what's most important. Is like when I was running Let It Rain, part of what I took into Let It Rain was that lesson, like every single kid here matters. They're important. I need to know their names. I need to look them in the eye. I need to encourage them. Like everybody matters. And she taught me that early on. It hasn't been easy, but that to me is the big one. Like just be thankful. Like be grateful you're here and you're able to make choices to better yourself. Like there's no excuses.
I think we can be inspired by a couple things. First of all, the job that you and your wife and Avery have done, despite some challenges in life, and anything that you do going forward is not going to be a challenge because we've had to handle this other thing. So everything else is easy. And then number two, Aubrey being an inspirational, that in there is a vibrant young kid that can't do some of the things you talked about, but yet still finds The Simpsons and South Park and Family Guy funny. And now when the listeners see her, those of you listening that live in the Dane County area, you probably aren't going to see her as much as maybe when Avery was playing AAU. But if you see her somewhere, and you can go over and say hi to her, because she gets it.
She'd love it.
And she would completely love it. What we just did in this first segment was we ended up starting at the beginning, and we started and we ended, but now we're going to kind of fill in the gaps here. You become a dad for a second time with your daughter, Avery. She enters the world. And this comes on the heels of your first daughter born, Gabrielle. You want to touch on that just a little bit? She
was born and died on January 25th, 2003. Like I said earlier, my wife was only 20 years old. I was 27, I think, at the time. Couple different things. One, a little unconventional. We were not married. I'm 27. She's 20. She's in school at Oshkosh at the time.
That's where Avery got the love of Oshkosh?
Maybe. The thing that I've always thought of, like becoming a father myself, and my Avery's 21 now. So Avery's older than my wife was when she lost Gabrielle. Like Kate's parents, so Sandy and Dan, the way they handled that. I mean, come on, Tim. If your daughter was 20 and knocked up by a 27-year-old, you may not like that too much. It may be a problem for you. And I know for me personally, I probably would have had a really hard time dealing with that. Her parents were just amazing through the whole thing. But what I can say is I think it was obvious to them that Kate and I just adored each other and just loved each other. No doubt about it. But, my wife was 20. Neither of us was ready to lose a child. That's really the first time in my life that life hit me hard. And I think, as you know, when we're kids, for the most part, life isn't quite as difficult as it is when you get a little bit older and things start happening. We went to the doctor, again, full term, just days before the baby was kicking, Gabrielle was kicking. You go into the little room and they put goop on the stomach and they're doing their little thing, trying to find the heartbeat, and they can't find the heartbeat. And I can tell something's wrong. I died a little bit inside, at that moment. But then they left, and they were super great. They're just like, oh, just give us a second. We just got to go check on something. But in your head, you're like, that's not normal. And then they come back and, they confirm they can't find the heartbeat. You're faced with that. Now, for me, it was easy, right? As hard as it was, it was easy compared to what my wife had to go through, because my wife had to then deliver the child. And I think that's what gets missed with stillbirths, and especially full-term stillbirths, is people think like, oh, well, it's terrible, right? It's terrible, but at least the kid wasn't one or something like that. Well, for a mother, that's different, man. Like, I can't even speak to it with any authenticity because I was a man. I was on the outside looking in. And in my head, being as naive as I was at the time, I still thought my daughter was going to come out alive.
Who really knows what to think in that whole situation,
right? You don't, because you're blindsided, right? You've never been through it before, and your mind's racing, and you're, of course, just not right in the head. I was at the right side of my wife when she was delivering, and I fully expected that baby to come out yelling and screaming, and she came out with a big brown head of hair, and she was pale and blue. Brutal.
Yeah, I think like when we talked before off air, I think we're going to have you back on.
Yeah.
Like I talked about the 10 different layers that I have that I can talk on, and you can certainly talk on, because that it probably, again, is a little bit not as rare as SMA, and it does happen.
Yeah.
You being able to be strong and talk about it today, and maybe even having your wife come on as well to maybe talk about it.
She'd be amazing.
Yeah. I mean, she is inspiring with what she has had to go through at such a young age. We do probably have some listeners out there, and there are people that do get pregnant when they're at a young age, and 20 is young, 18 is young, whatever, that your wife has a gift to share. And I talk about this all the time with guests. You can share it or you can keep it to yourself.
Sure.
But you can help some people out there who have gone through this situation and don't know where to turn. They don't want to talk about it, but maybe they can tune into Punch Up Survive and Thrive 8791 and hear these parents talk about that experience, and you and your wife can help somebody through a tough time. And then those 5 things that you would talk about, how did you survive that and then thrive? You would be able to help someone. So we are going to get to the guts, the meat and potatoes, the in-between here in a little bit in segment 2. But before we do that, I do have to come back to our sponsor. So Buck and Honeys has been with the Survive and Thrive 8791 podcast since the very beginning. With 4 locations in Madison, one is always near. People ask why Buck and Honeys. Owner Tom Anderson places a high priority on the mental health of his employees. He has a mental health professional available for them should they need support. I don't know how many businesses go above and beyond their employee assistance program, but Buck and Honeys does. In June 2007, your baby girl, Aubrey, is missing milestones and is diagnosed with SMA Type 1. And we talked about it now, that almost eradicated, but through screening, and once your child is born, there's some screening that can be done that can take care of that, but that wasn't available in 2007. So in segment 2, you are going to talk us through what it was like for your family and you, Cory Poole, to survive and thrive those first few weeks, days, weeks, months, and years. So I'm going to have the listeners hopefully are going to stay tuned. Don't change that dial. You don't want to miss segment 2 of Survive and Thrive 8791. We will be right back.
If you, a loved one, or someone you know is experiencing a physical, mental, or emotional crisis, there is help and resources out there. Contact NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness Helpline, at 1-800-950-6264. This is a free service providing information, resource referrals, and support to people living with a mental illness, their family, providers, and the public. United Way 211 is available 24/7, 365, and offers free confidential assistance. They connect people with the local programs and services that can help. Dial 211. Emergency Crisis Services, dial 911. The Suicide Prevention Lifeline, dial 988. To connect via web, chat, visit suicidepreventionlifeline.org. Along with those numbers, there is help. You just need to say 3 words. I need help. Now, back to the show.
We are back. Welcome to segment 2 of Survive and Thrive 8791. I'm your host, Coach Tim DeCora. The podcast is where I feature guests who share their story in hopes of helping others who may be struggling with what life throws at them. We're going to dive in right here, right away. Shortly after Aubrey is born in 2007, she is diagnosed with SMA Type 1. Obviously very concerning. What were your first thoughts when you heard this?
Oh, I was crushed, destroyed. Only because when she started missing milestones and we went to see the pediatrician and then got the referral to neurology, you knew something wasn't right. So the time between that and actually meeting with the neurologist, I don't remember how long it was. It's been a long time, but I, of course, became a Google doctor and started researching because that's what I do.
Mm-hmm.
Katie's more on the other spectrum of she's going to let things happen. She's going to have a positive attitude, and whatever happens, she'll deal with it. She's a little stronger that way than I am. And all of my research with her symptoms and her age and all that kind of stuff, the worst one that was out there was spinal muscular atrophy type 1. That's the one that I did not want to, I did not want my daughter to have. And I let my wife know that heading into the neurology appointment, as long as it's not SMA type 1, I'm fine. Well, of course, that's what the neurologist thought it was when we met. So that was crushing. But at the same time, we were very lucky at the time. We're at UW Children's Hospital, which is a fantastic, incredible hospital. And at that time, the best doctor in the world for SMA type 1 just happened to be working there. Her name is Dr. Mary Schroth. She's no longer working there now. I believe she works with like the National Foundation, Cure SMA or something like that. But Dr. Schroth, whom I did not like at our first meeting,
initially,
because I mean you don't even know how to think straight when you're going through something like that.
And I mentioned this earlier. Nobody knows. There's no, which is why you're here on the podcast. Is you're going to give somebody that has some similar diagnosis, you're going to give them a little bit of a playbook.
Sure.
That you've kind of are going to talk us through a little bit.
Yeah. So Dr. Schroth is a very blunt person, incredibly caring, incredible human being, but she is blunt. And she bluntly told us, like, your kid has SMA. And at the time, that's what the neurologist thought. To get a proper diagnosis at that time, it was a blood test. It took like a month to get the blood back. So at the time, there was no confirmation. It was just opinion. But Dr. Schroth, again, best doctor in the world, she knew exactly what she was talking about. But what she let us know, like, life expectancy is 2. If you do nothing, your child's going to die, and you're going to watch it slowly happen, which was frightening and scary. But she said, but I have a protocol. And it's a protocol I've been developing. I have kids that are 5 years old now. We're keeping them alive. We're giving them good lives. We're doing everything we can. And, basically she asked, like, is that something you two would be interested in? And Katie and I immediately, of course, were just like, yeah, whatever we
Sign me
do.
up.
Yeah.
Sign us up.
Whatever we have to do, like we'd already lost a child. So the last thing we wanted was to lose another one. So we were desperate and just said, yeah, show us the way. And away we went.
So we're going to back up for a second, because this is the part where you being the former educator and me being the former educator, retired, somebody can grab their pen or pencil now and okay, how did you get through that initial, did you breathe? Did you pray? Did you go for long runs? What were a couple of the things that kind of got you through that initial phase?
I think at that point, again, it's been a long time, but we had incredible parents. So, and they live close, and Katie's very close with her parents. I'm close with my parents. So they were an incredible source of strength for us. Now, personally, how did I get through it? I honestly don't really know. I'm a reader. I'm a guy who likes to work out. I like to stay active. I need my mind to be doing something. So I think that had a lot to do with it. But honestly, Tim, I think it was just more, you're so hyper-focused at that time in your daughter and what's happening and how are we going to make sure that we can do everything we can to keep her alive. I think it was just the fight or flight response taking over and away we went.
As you were talking, I was trying to give you a little bit of a, what can I take from this? I think one of the coping skills that I've implemented with my own anxiety and fear and worry is to just remind myself, what am I doing right now?
Yeah.
And I think that's all you could do was live in the moment of we've got our daughter and she's alive right now.
Yeah.
What we can think about the future, but what are we doing right now for her?
Yeah. And that was, it's thrust upon you, of course, right? Mm-hmm. So you didn't really have any other choice if you wanted to keep your kid alive. My coping skills that I have now were developed, over years, right? At that time, there was really no coping skills other than in the moment, keep my kid alive.
Yeah.
You know, that was kind of the coping skill. And, you know, you look back on it now and, you know, my wife, who probably still hasn't recovered from losing Gabrielle, she was crushed. The way I dealt with it early on after the diagnosis and into the first few years when we were in and out of the hospital consistently, Aubrey dying on us. I mean, she coded numerous times on us. I had it easy compared to my wife. I got to go to work because, you know, I had to provide for the family,
Yeah.
pay the bills and all that kind of stuff. Going back to when when Aubrey was born in April of 2007, my wife had just graduated college from Edgewood in May, so that we have pictures of Katie holding Aubrey at a graduation. You know, my wife's excited to, you know, take on the world and have a career and all that kind of stuff, and that just all came crashing down with the diagnosis. So she lost a child, and now she's someone who's young, excited about her future, and she had that all taken away from her. Now, she wouldn't do it any different. You know, she stayed home and took care of Aubrey and took the brunt of all of that. But that was easier for me because I got to leave the house. I got to go do things. I got to, you know, kind of stay involved with normal life, and she just didn't. And I know I was doing my best, so I'm confident I can say that. Like, I did everything I could, and I think overall we did a really good job. The reason we're here is because of love.
Yeah.
Love for a child, love for each other, love for family, and that's what got us through everything. It was hard, it was difficult, especially early on. You know, I remember I was helping my dad out early in the mornings back then, trying to make some extra cash, and it was a Sunday. I was doing the books with him early on, and Kate had taken Aubrey and Avery to church. And church is in some prairie, and her mom's there with her. And her mom took Aubrey downstairs, and Aubrey was really young. And Aubrey, you know, she can't swallow. She still can't swallow, of course, but something got stuck, and she coded. And there just so happened to be a nurse downstairs that brought her back to life. And then they got an ambulance, and they call me, and I take the call at Pooley's, and I, of course, get in my car right away, and I'm on East Washington, and there's the ambulance right in front of me, and I don't know if my kid's alive or not. So that's a memory that just came back to me, actually. So just stuff like that, and like month-long hospital stays where you're living in a hospital room, and you're trying to manage not only your daughter and how sick she is and trying to keep her alive and learning all the stuff that we need to learn to be better and caring for her. But you got a 3.5, 4-year-old who needed us too, Avery. And we were really lucky because my parents, Kate's parents, our siblings, they would take Avery. They'd get her to school. They'd pick her up from school. You know, Avery would go from school right up to the hospital room and be with us until, you know, 8 o'clock at night or whatever. And then one of them would take her home. So Avery was loved and comforted by family. And I think we always had it in our mind that we needed to make sure that Avery felt loved and comforted. I think just our parental instincts took care of that in some ways, but we couldn't have done it without family. We just couldn't have done it.
I know you talked about maybe you not being as present as maybe you wanted to in hindsight. But somebody who's listening right now is going to be able to take that, and maybe your message to them is be a little more involved, and you're listening to me as the father of a child who's got SMA Type 1 and a wife who's doing it all.
Yeah, and I think some of that is I thought I was doing what I was supposed to be doing, providing for the family. We were single income, whatever, at that point in time because my wife couldn't work. So I thought I was doing the right thing. But the bottom line is I think I was hiding in some way in activity, in a role of provider. And you look back on it now, it's like, yeah, you did a great job at that. Like a great job. You're a good dad, you know, you supported the family, all that kind of stuff. But the person that you vowed to love through good times and bad needed you, and in a way that I wasn't capable at the time of providing her because I didn't have the coping skills. I was crushed. I was broken, you know. Somehow we made it through. But I think ultimately it was just a love for ourselves as partners, and of course for our children. I mean, our children are everything to us.
I think I'm thinking to myself, maybe you went and took 2 steps backwards to go 3 steps forward.
Yeah.
Because I don't think you can sprint through a life like that with your daughter and the needs that she has. So you've got to go one step.
Yeah, you don't even know what you're really doing. You don't know what to do. Like you're desperate. You're hanging on. You're doing everything you can just to get through and to keep your kid alive. And unfortunately, what happens in those situations is things that are really important, that should be really important, they get missed. Because your focus is so much on something that is needed and is present. And so I don't think we did anything wrong per se. But if we could go back and do it again, I think I would handle things a little bit differently in support of my wife and helping her to cope better with it, be more present for her, be an actual loving, supportive husband, which I was a good dad. We had a great family, and this is all hindsight. And it is something I think I said earlier, like I can confidently say I did the best I could. And that's the message I always give my kids is like, your best sometimes is not going to be good enough, but as long as you're giving your best, you can be okay with it. But then you got to learn. You got to take what you did, take your mistakes, take your failures, learn from them, and then do your best in the next moment. And then, you're on a trajectory then. You just keep getting better and better as a human, as a basketball player, as whatever it is you have in life. Long-winded answer there.
Some of the guests I've had on turned me into like a little 10-year-old boy when you're telling these stories. And normally I would maybe want to dive in and ask a question quick, but so you've got me in the story of kind of what happens. I'm feeling your emotions. And you're sitting here right here and in awe. I'm inspired. I'm up, I'm down. I'm kind of on the ride with you. And hopefully the listeners are getting something out of this. And I think they will. And your story is really fascinating. You talked about your parents, both sets. I think that's really important. Yeah, you don't know where to go to, but you have your mom and dad here. And you can lean on them, and your wife's got mom and dad here, and you talked about them doing a lot of the shuttling around of Avery, and you wanted to make sure that she was taken care of and her needs were met, and she wasn't taking a back seat. And I think the proof is in the pudding with her that she's a college basketball player. She had a very good high school career. And she's probably going to graduate in a few years with nursing, following in her mom's footsteps. And she's going to be giving back because she's got this experience of how important that is. The other thing I wanted to tell you that works for me now is I kind of was like you. I look back on when my kids were younger and I wish I would have did things a little bit differently. But I don't want to let that overshadow the work I'm doing now, trying to help people. And same thing with you. You're doing some great work now. Yeah. And you've got your hands full because of Aubrey.
Love is what really got us through all of that, and just being present enough to know, like, our kids really matter to us. Our relationship really matters to us. Now, we had great models, and you're getting back to my parents. My parents have been married for 50 years. Kate's parents are closing in on that as well. So, I mean, we had great models of, we wanted a family. We didn't want a split family. And Kate and I've told numerous people, like, we should probably been divorced, numerous times with all the stuff that we've been through. You look at the statistics on losing a child, dealing with a child who has a terminal illness, some of the other stuff that we've been through that really kind of hit us hard because of the way that we coped. We just didn't have real good coping mechanisms early on. We lost Gabrielle, and then it kind of cumulative effect as it went into Aubrey. It's just, that's life. Life hit hard, but you keep going.
I think that's why we have you here, because so many people would turn to substances. Mm-hmm. So many people would turn to divorce, like you said.
Absolutely.
There's so many other negatives, and that didn't happen with the Poole family because of the love you had. That really overshadowed a lot of the other things and kept you glued together. We talked about the basketball part, and I want to interject this because you sharing your story, there's some good that came, that kind of came out of it. First of all, the basketball part, I told you that basketball helped me navigate growing up in an alcoholic family that I lived in. Basketball helped give Avery an opportunity to be the focal point at times. You turned that love of basketball into 12, I think, years of Let It Rain, if I did my math correctly.
I think that's right.
Okay, 12 years of a marquee basketball program for girls in the Madison-Dane County area, and that can help you. And that can help you cope. You had a special connection and I think this is cool with the UConn women's basketball program and head coach Gino Auriemma. So those of you listeners that don't know who Gina Auriemma is, just Google best college basketball coach of all time, and you're gonna get Gino's name, men's or women's. Tell us about that story quick.
I don't know that we have a connection. I've met Gino once, and it was at a tournament down in Chicago. He was there recruiting, of course, with his head assistant. I forget her name, so I apologize for that. But they were walking through, and I had Aubrey. We were down there for a tournament, and they were gracious enough to stop and talk with us. And they spent, it was probably all of 5 minutes. It wasn't a real long time, but we took some pictures, and they talked to Aubrey. They treated her as a human, which doesn't always happen. So that was super, super cool. But you could just tell, like, he's a special, special person, and so was his assistant. Like, they're special people. So we took some pictures, and I think I told you earlier, that picture that we put on Twitter, on the Let It Rain Twitter, is still to this day the most liked and interacted with post we've ever done. I know the UConn community got a hold of it, so it got kicked around with them too. So,
what 5 things or suggestions to thrive with a child who has SMA Type 1? You sent me 5 things, and I'm going to toss these in underhand.
Sure.
And we've got probably about 8 to 10 more minutes. I'm going to give you about 90 seconds to just kind of talk on them, but this is where the listeners pull out some paper and a pencil or a pen and start typing these things in. So the first one was, number 1 is, it will be really hard with diagnosis of this magnitude, but the challenges will lead you to a new and better perspective on life. So talk about that. 90 seconds, go.
Terminal illness of a child is always going to be hard, but as parent, the best thing we can do is love our children and be the best we can be for them. So the idea that it's hard, I think, isn't any surprise, but you do have to walk into it knowing that, like accepting, like, this is going to be really challenging, but you're up to the challenge because you have love in your heart for your child. What it will give you is just an amazingly better perspective on life. I know that I appreciate my life more than I ever would have if I wouldn't have had Aubrey. She's taught me so much about inclusion, about looking at people and knowing that they are human, treating people with kindness, trying to have understanding in your heart, valuing each and every day. The present moment contains all possibilities. Like, I learned that through her. You have the opportunity to make a choice each and every moment of the day. And those choices, they accumulate over time. So if you go into that and knowing it's going to be hard, but knowing, like, I can be the type of person that my daughter or my son needs through this, you can change the world, you can change their world, and in turn, they're going to change yours. You just become a different person.
Yeah, good. And we didn't even touch on the fact that you had all of this equipment to try to keep her alive and all those things. And yeah.
If you came over to my house, her room is a hospital room. I mean, it's a hospital bed. It's a cough machine. It's a suction machine. It's a vent with humidification. It's everything. I mean, it's a feeding pump. It's a full-on hospital room, and it's what we navigate every single day of our lives. But it's our life now. It's just normal life.
It's your new normal.
Yeah, it's our normal life. So to us, it's nothing special. But it'd be intimidating for somebody to walk into, for sure.
The second part, communicate with your spouse early on and make sure they know you're there for them. Find time alone to connect, consistently build love and marriage, and don't let it get lost.
I've hit on that already through this little conversation, but it's easy to go inside, avoid the pain, and hide. I hid an activity. I got to go to work. I coached basketball. I did lots of other things. Your spouse needs you. Like, with something this difficult, you have to be there for each other. That, to me, is the thing that we missed in some way. Like I said earlier, we did the best we could, but we could have been better to each other while this was going on, especially me. So that to me is one I'd hit on immediately with anybody that called me. Like, don't forget your spouse, especially if they're the ones whose life is being more disrupted than yours and Katie's was in our situation, because I got to go out to work and still live a fairly, not normal life, but more normal than she was. She was stuck.
And you also talked about the third part then is, in addition to that spouse, you had Avery. Mm-hmm. So if you have other children, make sure they get the attention and love they deserve. It's a hard balance when one child requires so much, but it's absolutely possible. And you prove that with the success that she's had in the classroom, on the court.
Absolutely. And I don't think that's any revelation to anybody, but again, it's something that you can easily miss because you're so focused on your child that has a terminal illness and needs you. Whatever that terminal illness is, or whatever that challenge is that your child has, even if it's not a terminal illness, when your child has special needs, they can consume you and consume your attention, and you can unfortunately neglect other children in your family. I've seen it happen with families that we've been associated with over the years. And you just don't want to do that. Your other kid, they need you. They need loving parents. They need support. They need the lessons that they need to grow up and thrive and be healthy. So yeah, absolutely.
Number 4, accept reality. Don't hide from it.
Pretty straightforward, but that's how I live my life now. There's a Stoic philosophy called amor fati, which is love your fate. And I was thinking about this last week. I think that's the foundation of a happy and content life, is learning to love the moment that you're in, no matter what that moment is. No matter how hard life hits you, you have the opportunity to make a choice. You have the opportunity to step up, move beyond that particular moment, move through it, and come out the other side a better person with more perspective. Maybe you're kinder, maybe you're wiser, whatever it is. But your ability to choose is your superpower. But you can't make good choices unless you actually accept reality and what it is that you're dealing with, so that you can move on in a healthy way.
And the last one, be different. Don't try to live a conventional life. You've been given something special. Use it and curate a new life with the lessons you learn from it. Teach the lessons to your children and embody them in your actions, and run down your new path together as a family. And there's part of living with what happened, and then also passing it on to other people that might need to hear some of what you're talking about today.
Yeah, I mean, you've been given this life, right? It's special, it's unique, but it's yours, right? Don't want to be anything other than what you are as a family. I know that's probably easy to say, like, well, yeah, duh. It's easy also to try to run away and hide from what it is that you're dealing with, to pretend like you have a normal family. You don't have a normal family. That's okay. Embrace that. Use the lessons you learn through this to teach your other kids. Move through life with your actions rather than words. Like, let your actions really drive and teach kids and teach people around you what life is about for you, and be okay with that. Like, I think that's super important.
What an episode. Because what you shared today, this is going to help another family somewhere that gets this kind of diagnosis, whether it's SMA1 or it's something else that is going to lead to a shorter lifespan. Your story and strength to share publicly with the Survive and Thrive 8791 crew is an inspiration. Not only did you share your story, but you also shared bits and pieces of your wife's story. And now your story will help other people in this situation. Our call to action, Cory Poole just shared an experience that our listeners can learn from. These 5 things can help you or someone you know survive and thrive, just like Cory and the rest of the Poole family did as a parent getting an upsetting diagnosis like his family did. Those 5 things that he talked about were, it's really hard, but the challenges will lead you to a new and better perspective on life. Communicate with your spouse early on. If you have other children, make sure you put them under the same spotlight as well. Accept reality. Don't hide from it. And understand that, you might have to be different, and don't try to change your life and think it's any different. It is what it is. Final thoughts as we close another great episode of Survive and Thrive 8791. Are there any final thoughts, Cory?
I'm grateful for all that I have. I think I shared with you like what would I call if I wrote a book, and it's actually a song lyric. It's lucky ones are we all till it's over. And I truly believe that. Like, I'm a lucky person. Everything that we've been through, it's been super, super difficult at times, but it's been so meaningful. It's brought so much meaning and purpose to our life. And I think that's what we're all in search of, is meaning and purpose. And you only get there through struggle and difficult times. And that's where we talk about accepting reality. Well, you can't get through a struggle or difficult times unless you accept reality and then try to work through it. But I think that's where your better life lies, is on the other side of hard work, essentially. So.
Yeah, I think it was 26, 27, 28 years ago that you and I came in contact with one another, and you took my job, and I just moved to a different building. And then you had to go, you went through this stuff, and I was watching from afar, and then you started the Let It Rain, and I was again watching from afar, and then we kind of reconnected over the last few years. But I would say that having you as a friend and knowing what you went through and where you've come out in the end, the journey's not over with, so you're still going to keep going on. But I just, it's inspirational, and I respect what you have had to go through, and you can be a person that people can look to for answers on a tough situation. And because of who you are as a person and your personality, I know that you're going to be there for other people, just like you've been there for your own. So sure. I really appreciate having you on. On our next episode, we will have another amazing guest in the Buck and Honey's remote studios who will share how they survived and thrived. If you have a story to share, or you know someone who does, please reach out to me at tdecora@gmail.com. Until next time, hang in there with whatever you happen to be going through. And with hard work, dedication, and determination, you can survive and thrive. Until next time, take care.